Hi everyone, you are officially welcome to another PLD session, and in today's session we are talking about functions in Python, object-oriented programming, which we'll delve into soon. But then before we get there, we need to really appreciate what functions is. And as I do always, I want to step back to outside programming, things that you can easily relate, okay, to explain the concept of functions so that when you bring it into the programming world, it becomes easy for you to appreciate. When we talk about a function, to me, I always see a function as just an action word. So in English, we were taught something called verbs. And we always say a verb is what? An action word. In that sense, if I tell you, if I say to you right now, walk, you know exactly what to do. Okay, it's like you have the meaning in you. You understand what work is. Once you understand English, I believe you understand what work is. And that's an action word. In the same way, if you tell your computer, your programming, using your programming language, if you tell your computer, like we've done before, print something, the computer knows exactly what to do. When you tell the computer, it does something in response to just saying it. That is what we call a function, basically. So a function is basically a word that when we call, allows our computer to do a specific thing. The interesting thing is that just like in human life, there are some words that you and I came to meet. Okay? You and I came to meet the word work, and we're told that work is for this purpose. Like work means move your legs. Okay? We're also told that cry means what? Cry. We all understand. So those ones are already inbuilt. Let me say it in that way because in programming, we'll say those are inbuilt functions. So they are functions that already exist in the programming language we are using. So in our case, there are functions that already exist in Python. So what I'm saying right now is that we have what we call inbuilt functions. And these are functions that already are available in our programming language. So an example is print, which we've been using for some time now. Print is an inbuilt function. But if that was the only thing that we were left with, then it wouldn't be important for us to even understand functions. We are also allowed to come up with our own functions. So we call those ones user-defined functions. If it was, let's say, language-wise, English language-wise, I'd have said something that if the two of us, or any of us here decide, or all of us here decide that let's agree on a word, and anytime you hear this word, this is the meaning. Okay, so let's say if we decide that going forward, if we say, let me use my name, let's say we are assigning a meaning to Obed. That's going forward, anytime we say Obed, it means that we should jump onto a Telegram call. We have agreed on it. So as soon as you hear Obed in the group, all of us here know that what? We have a Telegram call to jump onto. It's a user-defined function, but then our goal is that the word that we have come up with is an action word. It's a word that as soon as it's said or called, we have to do something. So when we define our own functions that we are calling user-defined functions, we are going to give an explicit definition, like exactly what the function should do whenever it is called to our computer. So we are defining our function that anytime they call this function, computer do A, B, C in this order. So we will tell the computer exactly what to do. And once we have defined it, we can then go ahead and use it anytime that we want. I hope that makes sense. So see functions just as action words. As soon as they say it, something is going to happen. What is going to happen? If it is not an inbuilt function, then you, the creator, or you, the programmer or software engineer, whoever you are, writing that function or writing the definition of that function will determine what that action word is going to do. The interesting thing is that you can call your function anyhow you want it, even though there are recommendations as to what to use and what not to use, but you are at liberty to use almost anything to describe your function. But then I think the only thing you are prevented from using is the keywords that, the special keywords that are natively being used by Python itself, which I've already discussed in a previous lesson. Okay, so that is basically the definition of functions. Now let's get into it. To get started with functions, the first thing we'll need to know is, how do I define action word and create my own action word for the computer to obey whenever it is called? But how do I define one? Let's see, define a function. To define a function in Python, call this 3-letter words, def. So that is what always begins the definition of a function. The word is coming from definition. Okay, so as soon as you write def like that, we know that you are about to define a function. Then the next thing will be the name of your function. Name of function. Okay, then after the name of the function, you bring your parentheses. This parenthesis can contain some information that your function may need in order to do the work you want it to do. Okay, but we'll get there. So what I was saying is, to define a function, we have the def keyword here, def, for this colon. Okay, then the rest would be indented. Remember that indentation is very important syntax. If you get the indentation wrong, your program is not going to run. So every other thing we usually, so code that is put together under function, under the function that you are creating. So the definition, the content of your function's definition will go here. So basically that's the structure of a function. You have the def keyword, the name of the function, parenthesis, colon, then the indented body of the function. As simple as that. So let me quickly jump onto a text editor so that we can practicalize what I'm saying. But then, even before I do that, let's start looking at why I want stuff. So let's call this func1.py. We've been doing our own stuff all this while. So why do we need to create functions? Advantages to using functions. And one of them that I can say is the reusability of code. So once we are able to create a function, what it means is that we've been able to put a set of code together that performs, let's say, a specific function. And that means that anytime we need that function, we don't need to go and rewrite all the code again. Okay, so for instance, let's say that we have, ordinarily, prior to today, if we are writing our programs, we usually go ahead and write our program. So let me start by creating a simple program that will convert into a function. Then Python 3. Okay, then let's create a simple program that will print out something for us. So I'll create a variable called name, and inside the name variable, I'll put my name here. Then print, I want it to, okay, so let me do something else too. Say my age to 99. Then I want it to print a statement saying, let me call the name here. This, I believe everyone on this call knows how to do. If you don't know or you don't understand this, then you have to go back to the sessions, the previous sessions. Name. So Ehoneah Obed. Let me say you are. Then I'll pass the age. Okay. I'll pass the age. Years old. Okay. So ordinarily this is what we've been doing. We create every part of our code. We write every one. Then when we run this program, the program runs from top to bottom. So everything here is going to be executed in the order in which they occur. So if you happen to be the first thing, then you are going to be executed first, followed by the second one, the third one, in that order. Okay. But then there are times that we don't necessarily want to execute a given code at to only execute it when we decide that it should be executed. And there are times that this thing that I've done here right now, I may need it for turning. I may have to come and rewrite the whole thing. So there is a way that we are able to put the whole concept into just one function, so that anytime at all that we want to we'll call our function. It will make more sense soon. So for now, let me just compile this code. Let's make sure it is working. I have to even update it. Let's see, class, then cd into the functions directory, then to executable of the func1 file. And now let's run func1. And it says, Ehoneah Obed, you are 99 years old. So let's assume that initially I didn't even use this. Let's do some calculations. I think that will make it interesting. So we are going to do some calculation. Let's, Ehoneah Obed, year of birth, say 1956. Okay. What we are going to do is we want to find his age. So age will be current year, which is 2022, minus your year of birth. Great. So now it will be able to do the calculation and tell us exactly how old I am. Let me hide this thing. Okay, good. Make room for. Now let's run the program again. And it says you are 66 years old. So this program has been able to calculate my age for me. Or let's say Ima. I want to do that for Ima. It means I have to now come down and recreate right Ima's name. Okay. So let me use just the first name. Then change, say 1925. Then if okay, so now the first one is printing mine, the second one is printing that of Ima. If I want to do it for another person, I have to also copy the whole code again. Imagine if you have, let's say, like 1,000 of these people, you keep writing all of the code over and over and over. You keep writing the code over and over and over, which is not good. Okay, I've already mentioned that in programming in general, there is a principle called DRY, D-R-Y. Don't repeat yourself. Okay, so in the spirit of not repeating ourselves, that is why we brought in functions. Functions will help us abstract all of these things. Like this block of code, we can put it into just one function, give it a name. So this whole thing, we just give it a name. And anytime we call that name out, it's going to give us this outcome. if it wasn't just the age that we're supposed to calculate, we're supposed to determine whether it's a leap year, their year of birth, whether their year of birth was a leap year, how often do they celebrate their birthday. Assuming we were supposed to, or let's say we have over 100 lines making up a single we have over 100 lines. It becomes tedious for us to rewrite the code over and over and over. So in order to avoid that, we have to put all of this into a function. So we can create a function to play this same role. In creating a function, I've already explained that we use the def keyword, def, then the name of the function. So let's say this function is an age calculator. Okay, calculator. So you do this with the column here. Then, because I am using VS Code and it has that, how do they call that? I mean, syntax highlighting, or like it's giving me the automatic indentation. Okay, in some editors they will leave you here and you would have to press the tab to get the indentation, but it's very important. If you don't obey that indentation rule, you are going to get an error. So very important for you to indent the code. Okay, what did we do? We needed a name. So let me just copy what we had here. Okay, let's copy what we had here. Add into a function. So we copy it here. Great. So this is how we create a function. Let me comment out image on. This is how we create a function. As simple as this, we have def keyword, the name that we are giving our function, then followed by parenthesis colon, then the actual body of the definition. Remember, supposed to do. So this particular function that we have defined right now, what it's supposed to do is tell us my name. I mean, I have my name here. Then you say you are this number of years old. Okay, so that's basically what it's supposed to do. If we need to use this function, we don't need to rewrite this code again. So in using the function, let me comment this thing out. Ideally, we should be commenting them, but now let me just say defining the function. Okay, after you define the function, anytime you want to use it, the technical term we use is calling the function. So you call the function. Remember that I've said a function is just like an action word, a verb. So when you call the verb walk, everybody knows that you have to walk. So right now, if I want my computer to do all of these things that I've put here, I just need to call the function I've created. And the function is called age underscore calculator with the parentheses. That is all. If I do this, it's going to run the program. So remember, let me comment this one out again. It is not the definition of the code that gives the results. So when we started, I said one thing. If you have the code, it will run from top to bottom. But when you put it into you call it. So now we have commented the call out. So I'm not calling it. It's just the definition that we have. Let's run this code and see the outcome we get. We are not getting any results. Why? Because this is just the definition. So as soon as we call this function, it's going to now run and give Obed, you are 66 years old. And this only came because we called the function. That means that anytime I want to get this done, all I have to do is to call the function, copy this and call this function again, call this function multiple times. So as you can see, I've called the function 4 times. This means that it's going to return 4 of those outcomes. And here we have it. 4 of them are turning up. But remember that prior to this, we needed to copy all the code before we get it to give us the same outcome again. Or depending on the parameters, if we have changed the parameters, then we'll need to call it again. So this makes us able to reuse our code. But if this is all that there were to functions, then it may be lacking in one way or the other. Because now, what if I wanted to print image on? What should I do? Because that was the end goal from the beginning, that we should be able to call out a lot of people. We should be able to use it on multiple people and still not repeat ourselves by writing the same code over and over. So that brings us to what we call function parameters. Okay, when you are creating a function, when you are defining a function, you are allowed to provide what we call parameters to the function. So these are like placeholders that you place inside the parentheses of the function that says that, hey, hold this. Anytime you are being called, you may be provided with this information for you to use. Okay? It's like sending somebody that you are creating a function called buy. Buy means they should go and buy you something. They understand. But what should they buy? And what should they use to buy? So if you send a child right now to go and buy you something, obviously you are going to give them what? The money, then what they should buy. So those becomes the parameters you give the child. When the child goes, he says, hey, I want this and that, and this is the money. Then they will give the child whatever you requested for the child to bring to you. So that's a function is basically related to an action word. Your computer should do something. Okay? It's like, hey, cook food for me, cook rice. You are telling your computer to cook rice. But how does the computer cook rice? You have to provide the ingredients that the computer is going to use to cook the rice. Okay? So that's this age calculator should calculate the age. What parameters does this age calculator require in order to calculate the age for me? So we may think about these things that we are passing directly in here may not be necessary. So let's see what and what we may need. We may need the person's name. We may need the year of birth. Then we may also need the current year. Okay. So we realize that to give us this outcome, we needed all the person, the age of the person. But to calculate the age, we needed what? The year that the person was born. So even here, when we were writing directly 2022 in there, it is not the best. Because what if we go into 2023? Does it mean your program is no longer going to work, or you have to now come in and update all of them? So let's get about functions. It helps, it allows us to format in any way that we want. So now we are asking that anytime you want to use this age calculator function, you have to provide these parameters. Give it this ingredient before it's able to do the work you want it to do. Then after you have given it, inside here, what do we want to use it for? In the same here, the name here, we are using the name here, so we don't need to worry about it. Age is underlined here because currently nothing points to age. But you remember that we are supposed to calculate for age. Age is equal to what? The current year. So what we are saying right now is that the current year that the person gives you, subtract the person's year of birth from the current year, and that gives you the age of the person. So as simple as this, we have created a work takes experience from whoever is going to use them. Never assume or presume that this function that you are creating, you are the only one who is going to use it. No. Because today you are the one using it, but tomorrow somebody may be using that same program that you wrote. Even sometimes it is even recommended that you explain what all of these are. So the parameter naming is also very important. At least if I say name, it would like impress on you that I want your name. Okay. So then to use this function this time around, I can't just call it calculator like this. But then let me still go ahead and call it and show you that that is not the right way to call it now. We have here the error. And what is the error? This function has missing 3 required positional arguments: name, year of birth, and current year. So it means that those are required. Now you've put them in here, so they are very much required. I can't prepare what you are asking me to prepare until you have given me the ingredient to do so. Now you are telling your, let me say, your younger sister or brother to prepare rice for you. You've not provided any ingredient whatsoever. How do you expect them to prepare it for you? Okay? So in this case, you have to go ahead and give the values. So I'll say Ehoneah, Obed. Remember that we have placed them in a particular order. So we have to keep that same order. So Ehoneah, Obed, followed by the year of birth is, what did I write initially? 1956, I guess. Then current year is 2022. So if I go ahead and run this code, let's run it and see. We are getting the same results that we had earlier. But this time around, you see how short our code has become. That is the power of functions. And this code will only run when we call it. The interesting thing about it is, instead of copying the we didn't know about functions, now I can print out information about several other people by only changing the parameters in here. Okay, so I think when we were doing C, I was battling with the 2 words, arguments, parameters. So let me correct you on that in particular. When you are defining the function, okay, these placeholders that you put there are called parameters. Please, a lot of people use it interchangeably. So sometimes when you are saying it, you don't think through about it. And that's what happened when I was doing the C program. Then when you are providing the actual values, okay, like this one where I've written the name, the year of birth, the current, these are called arguments. Okay, so those are just the difference. It's like almost the same thing, but not the same thing. This is just placeholders, and these are values. Okay, so let me say these are placeholders. Then these are actual values. So that's the difference. In case you see them anywhere at all, that's just the difference. Okay. Then let's change these ones. So Ima, year of birth 1925. Then current year, Ima is still in 2021. Let's see, next person, Damien. Damien was born 1942. He's in 2023. Then the last person, Ernest. Ernest was born 1985. He's in 2028. Okay, so this means that we can use it. You see, when we did it initially, it was just for 2020, but now we have created a function for it, and you can see that I have 2020 here, I have 2021. irrespective of the year that you are using, this function is going to get us the right answer. Okay. So when we run this now, we have 4 people's details provided. Ehoneah, Obed, you are 66 years old. Ima, you are 96. Damien, you are 81. Ernest, you are. So this is like the power of functions. Now, if you don't call the function, if we get rid of all of these, then we have part of our code here. Say our code is printing something else. Let's say, hey, ideally, let me uncomment this one. So ideally, what happens is that in Python programming, or in almost every programming language, the code is usually read from top to bottom. Okay, so here the code is going to run from top to bottom, but because this part has been until it is called, so it is not going to run. Let me call this particular one after, let's call it after this hey, print an empty line, then hey, print this. So if you didn't know, you would have expected that right after this particular one that we are printing, we should come and execute the function. But the nice thing about functions is that they won't just go off. They will only be executed when we call them. So if I go ahead and run this program, this will run, but the function will not run. We'll now come down to this part where we have these 2 print statements. This print will run, this print will run, before finally this will run. I hope it makes sense. Maybe I should do debugging here for you to see, but I hope you understand. Okay. Let me clear this. Why is this not running? Did the NS one run? No. Okay, I haven't saved it. Sorry. All right. So let's run it. And as you can see, we have Emmanuel has printed. We have hey has also printed. Then there is the space before Ernest. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. All that I'm saying is that when we create functions, the definition of the function is not what is going to run. The function is only going to run when and only when it has been called. Okay, and that means that we can create our functions even at the top and call it at the very bottom. Or we can even create a function at the bottom and call it at the top. That is allowed. Okay, very interesting stuff when it comes to functions. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? So one challenge that we are currently having with our function is the fact that we have to put these things in the order in which they came. So if I move this here, there's going to be a problem. Let me delete all of these. Delete every other thing we have. Great. So pay attention here. This ideally is supposed to be the year of birth. Then this is supposed to be the current year. But unfortunately, I messed them up. Okay, so let me even do this. Okay, I know this will run. So let's run this before I do what I wanted to do. But then you can see that this is supposed to be the current year, except that I've written it in this position. So go ahead and run this program now. And the interesting thing that we have here is that NS is negative 43 years old. Why is that so? Because we've mixed up the positions of these 2 arguments. So when we are using parameters like this, or when we are using arguments in this form as we have it, we call them positional arguments. Okay, where's my pen? We call them, let me move here. Positional arguments. Positional arguments. And what that means, or what you call parameters. And I've explained the difference between arguments and parameters. And what this means is that if you change their positions, something is going to go wrong. So their position mean a lot to them. And just as we saw, when we switched the position, we had a negative 43. Let me go ahead and switch this to, for you to see how dangerous it can be if you don't know what you are doing when working with positional arguments. So now let's run the program. You know that ideally this is supposed to be name, then this is supposed to be year of birth, then current age. Now I've mixed all of them up. Let's run this, and we are getting an error. The error we are getting is a type error, and it's saying that age calculator missing one required positional argument, current year. Oh, okay, this is coming from me. No, I needed to have corrected, sorry. I needed to have corrected this. I put them together as one with, okay. So now we have 3 parameters in here. Let's run it again. Run this. And the error we are getting is unsupported operand type as type for the integer and the string. Why are we getting this error? The reason being that here, this particular line, sorry. Here, we're setting a string here, but we are using, an integer, which would have worked anyway. But then this particular side where we are doing current year minus year of birth. Our current year in this case is 1985. And our year of birth is this. So essentially what we are doing when we enter the function is we are doing this. Age is equal to current year, which is 1985, minus, then we are presenting next year. That's what we are doing. And this doesn't exist. Like, it wouldn't work. You can't subtract a string from an integer. That's not possible. So that is the reason why we are having this error. Very important. So when you are dealing with positional keywords as we have them, you have to pay particular attention to their positions. Make sure you are giving the first argument to the first parameter, the second argument to the second parameter, and in that order. But what if I really want to guard against it because I don't know who will be using my program? So let me guard against it. If you want to guard against it, then we can introduce what we call keyword arguments. Okay? So instead of using positional, we can now use keyword arguments. What do we mean by keyword arguments, and what else will you do differently? So with keyword arguments, it's still the same way that we define our function. We are not doing anything spectacular, but then when we are calling our function, that's where we are going to make a few changes. Okay, so to use a keyword argument, all that you need to do is remember this parameter that you have here, the name of the parameter. So here, this 2028 is supposed to represent the current year. All that I have to do is say current year is equal to 2028. Then I now have to say name is equal to Ernest. Then I go ahead and say year of birth is equal to this. And now we don't have any errors. And when we run this program, it's going to use it exactly how we want it to be used. So the only difference is that here we are aware of the parameters that are to be used. And for that matter, we call their names when we are passing our arguments. Sorry, when you are doing these things, it's recommended that you don't leave spaces, okay? That's the recommendation. So close out the spaces. Great. So now if I run this program, hopefully it should give me the right answer that I'm looking for. And it says, NS, you are 43 years old, which was the same thing we had when we had them in the given order. So anytime you want to use your arguments in any order, then you have to mention the parameters and provide the values with the help of the assignment symbol or operator. I hope that makes sense. If you do it this way, you can always use them anyhow you want. So that's the difference between positional arguments and the keyword arguments. Any questions about those two? Positional arguments and yes, any questions about it? Let's create a new file and call it bmi.py. I don't know why I like creating BMI functions, but then let's go. USI. Yes.
Hello, Dr. Obed. Please, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
My question is, you just said that if you want to call the function, you can use either positional or keyword arguments, which I understand it too. What I want to ask now is there a rule that if you start using positional, you must maintain it? If you start using keyword, you must maintain it? Or can you be using it interchangeably? That's my question.
Okay, so there's no fast and hard rule about it. Like it's more of a preference, like your own preference. Okay. Because as you saw earlier, there's actually no difference. The difference comes in when you are calling it. So you as an individual, when you are calling your function, how do you like to call it? If you think you can remember the order that we have here, then you can go with your positional argument. Okay? But if you can't remember the order, then it's best that you go this way. However, there are some functions that when created, like when we did the session that we did on input and output in Python, when I talked about a print function, what you realize is that this print function has some positional arguments before some optional keyword arguments. Over here, you and I will have to go back and see how this was implemented. But then you realize that these positional arguments, they don't have any parameters that we can use to call them. We have to provide objects there. But a keyword argument like end, okay, we have to provide what is supposed to be ending with. Then there is another keyword argument like sep, which we have to provide what we want to separate them with. Does that make sense? So in the implementation of this print function, we are required that we provide some positional arguments. But then these are optional keyword arguments, except that when you are going to use any of these, you will need to use the keywords. You can't get them done without the keywords. So it usually depends on how the function has been implemented. But if you are creating the function, just go with what works best for you. Okay, and how you like to call your functions. Ideally, I don't know, it's more of a personal choice. Okay, so what works for you, you should stick to that. I hope you are answered. To calculate the BMI of an individual, we need a height and we need weight. Okay, so let's go on and define BMI calculator. BMI calculator. We need weights and we need heights. Then what are we going to do? Let me just call BMI as a variable and assign it to BMI is equal to weight. So weight divided by so those who don't know, don't worry about it. It's just health something multiplied by. Okay, so I should have probably given you the function. BMI basically it tells you whether your weight is healthy, if you have a healthy weight or not. Okay, and basically how you calculate it is you divide your weight by trying to calculate the BMI. Whatever the person's weight is divided by their height times their height. Okay, height times their height. That's what I've done here. Or you could have done height squared. So in Python, I could have done something like this: height squared. Something like this to have worked, which also represents height square in Python. Okay, but let me go back to what I had. Height times height. Great. But then okay, let me still go ahead and print this BMI. Great. So now I've defined a function that calculates the BMI of someone. So if you use this, all you have to do is call the BMI calculator, and provide your parameters, your arguments. What are the arguments here? Weight, somebody is 70 kg. Then height in meters will be, say, 1.76 meters. Okay, so you can use different units, but now my focus is in meters and kilogram. So meters for height, kilogram for weight. My next project that I am thinking of doing, I may be building a health calculator. So maybe that's why I've started from here. Okay, so what we are trying to achieve right now, if I should call this, it's going to print. Maybe I should put some information here, okay? And say your somewhere, that's why. Let me see your BMI, pass the F string. Your BMI, so let me see, your BMI is BMI. Hopefully you all understand this thing that is happening, all of this. Okay, so now we call our function. The name is BMI calculator. Oh, BMI, okay. Then let's call BMI. Your BMI is 22.599. So I could have done this just for ease. I hope you know that sign, what I just did here. So this is integer division or floor division. So it forced it to the lowest integer. Floor division, it forced it to the lowest integer. So that at least I just want the raw value, 22. Just have an idea of the person's BMI. Okay, so now we are getting it printed on the screen when we run the program. We then want to print something on the screen. Yeah, what if I'm actually going doing something. I just want you to give me the answer. Don't show it because I'm not ready to show it. Okay, very important. When we begin learning programming, we see that we use this print when you are doing C, print F, depending on the programming language. Some programming language are using echo, because it's how you know whether you are doing the right now or not. But then when you are building actual applications, hardly will you use print, especially in the definition of a function. You usually don't want your function to just speak to go and buy you something, or maybe it should go and ask for the name of somebody. Okay, so I've sent you. Ima, kindly ask Tony what is his name. I mean, I'm just giving it as an example. They now start shouting, Tony, Tony, Tony. Like that's the name. That's what we are doing here. Like we've asked wanted it to do, calculate it for us, and now it is shouting into the screen with a print function. So most of the time, using a print inside a function is not ideal. So what is the alternative? The man went to ask the name. He could have just written the name down, or he could have just come to me. Okay, so let's assume he had written the name on a sheet of paper. He could have come to me and given me the name. I will open it up and do whatever I want to do with it. Do we get the concept? So most often than not, you don't want to. So what I'm saying is that, when you get the name, don't shout it. Return the name to me. I will decide what I want to do with it. So in programming, we use the keyword return. Return BMI. If I run this, just to show you the difference, let me run this. And now it's still nothing happened. I'm not seeing anything. Maybe I should clear my screen for you. Let's run the program. And nothing happens. But then the calculation has actually taken place. So where is it? It has returned it to this particular. So it's like this time around, I sent Ima to go and get me maybe Tony's number. He went and I decided to keep it. I didn't show anybody. That is what has happened. I could have decided to do anything I want. I could have decided that, okay, once I receive it, now let me tell everybody the number that I received, because I want everybody to hear. But it is not appropriate, only in special cases, depending on what you are doing. And sometimes when you are debugging your code, that's when you want to be printing things out to your screen to see. But when you are developing an actual application, hardly will you be using it. So you are mostly going to be using a return statement to return it. So now that I've gotten the BMI, I know that this particular thing is holding my BMI. Okay, so I can say that BB's BMI is equal to this. This means for many people. So this is BB's BMI. I can calculate AA's BMI. Also be returned to him. Let's change this to 7.2. Okay. If I still run this program, I'm not getting anything. And the reason is that nobody is filling anything. They are just returning their values, and they are returning it to their rightful owners. So a program. Remember, we've done a lot of programs. So now I want to check BB's BMI and A's BMI. Who has the highest BMI? Okay, so I can write a simple program to check. I say if BB's BMI is greater than is greater than AA's BMI, then what do I want to do? I want to print, let me just say something unusual. Say BB is, but let me say BB is heavier than AA. If this is not the case, then, so we use the else statement. If that's not the case, then it means AA is heavier. A is heavier than BB. Okay, so you see that in this particular case, even though I was interested in getting the BMI, my interest was not to plot the BMI. My interest was to find out who has the bigger BMI or larger BMI message. That's what my interest is. For that matter, I decided to use the print statement. I'm going to get an error here, but then let me do it. To printing, it's not returning anything. So at the end of the day, it's like saying BBM. Okay, you let me run this program just to show you what I mean. Run this, and you see what we are getting. We are getting an error, and the only reason why we are getting an error is that we are already printing, and the function is not returning anything. It's anytime this function is called, so this function was called, it printed something, it brought nothing to this. Please don't picture it as if when it prints, the function prints to the terminal, the standard output. So it didn't print, even though when you call this, I'm sure you saw it printing. You see, when you called it, it printed variable. And this will also not print to this variable. It prints directly to the standard output. But that's not what we wanted. So in this case, the best thing to do is to use. And now when we go on to, let's clear this, run the program, and A. So it means that now it's returning something meaningful. Maybe advice to somebody. You can now go and check whether the person has a healthier weight, is the person obese, is the person underweight. You do all those calculations using conditional statement to check all those ones. Then you now pass a message or maybe an advice. So if you are building, let's say, a health application, and this person has come, you've asked them to input their weight and their height, you've calculated their BMI, you've checked all the other parameters. You have all the outcome because you use the return statement and you didn't use print. Please pay attention to that. Okay, so now that we know that we can use the return statement, what if we need to return more than one thing? If it was the print statement, we could have printed as many things as we want. We just write print and it will print all of them. Inside the same function, we can print like 1,000 things. But what if we needed to return? Because this year, it seems I was able to return just one thing. So let's now say that I need to return something else. Let me say his weight in, this weight was provided in meters. So let's calculate weight in centimeters. Weight in centimeters will be equal to the weights that were provided with times 100. Okay? The weights that we provided with times 100. So I want to return the person's BMI and the weight in centimeters. Remember, what do I want to return? Let's write it here. I want to return BMI and weight in centimeters. Those are the two things I want to return. So the nice thing about Python is that with a function of object, And we've learned a lot of things about Python already. Apart from just returning a single value like this, we've learned about things like tuples. Okay, we've learned about lists. We've learned about dictionaries. So these ones, if you remember, and we've learned about sets, when I was teaching them, I said these are collections. Okay, so anytime you want to return multiple data, you just need to create one of these collections and return it, depending on how you are going to use it. So for instance, I want to return a tuple. If I want to return a tuple, I'll just do this, BMI, comma, then the weights in centimeters, right? This is going to return the two of them for me. But then if you are returning a tuple like this, when you are receiving them, you show how to receive. Because if right now BBMI, if I go ahead and run this, it's going to print the outcome as, sorry, I mean, not the print. I didn't use the print statement here. Let me just comment this out and try printing them and say print underscore. Okay, good. Then let's comment this one out too. So we are using just one of them. I'm returning a tuple. Remember, this time around, it's not just the BMI that I'm returning a tuple. So if I go ahead and I print this, let's see what we get. What are we getting? A tuple. Okay, I'm getting a tuple, and this is the weight of the person, and this is what the weight in centimeters. Sorry, this is the BMI, and that is very simple. Depending on how you are going to use it, I could also have just collected the values, the individual members of this tuple, and say maybe the first one is a BMI, the second one is weight in centimeters. Okay, so then if I go ahead to print just the BMI, I hope you people understand what is happening. I'm trying to explain it as much as possible. So when I do this, we all know that this particular function here, we all know now that it's going to return two things. It's going to return BMI and what weight underscore CM. It's going to return these two. So essentially what we're doing is that this BMI belongs to this guy, then this weight belongs to this one. Okay, so that can easily be done. Let's just, here we are printing the, let's add the weights in centimeters. Okay, so if we go ahead and print this, as you can see, we have the BMI printed on the first line from here. The same line. So that is how you go about it. And you could actually pass it as any of these and return it. Okay, so that is how you return multiple types of data. Any questions? Yes, any questions? Everybody understands what is happening. I hope so. Okay. So another interesting thing that we need to do is, earlier on I talked about when you are using the positional argument and the hi Tony.
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
Okay, so you're returning a tuple here in this function, BMI calculator. How about if you want to, how about if you return a list of
you can
BMI.
return. Yes, so you can return a list. If you want, let's say I wanted multiple things, I could have created a list, say my list, then pass all the things here, BMI, weight in centimeters, height, weight, whatever you want to pass to it.
Okay.
It's a list. But you should know how you are going to receive it. You should know how you are going to receive it, because if I go ahead and I just print, I'll just do something like this. If I do this, this will print out. Where is the error? Okay. Yes. So let me even delete this one. Right now, that variable here will be assigned to a list. And when you print it, it's going to print a list for you. Let's print this. As you can see down here, we have that list that you created here. And you should know how you are going to receive the members of the list. So maybe you are going to use a loop to get each member of the list, which we've already discussed. All that you care about is what are you returning. And if I know I'm returning a tuple, how do I assess the members of a tuple? If I know I'm returning a list, how do I assess the members of a list? How do I use the members in a dictionary and all of that? But you can return any of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So when we are creating the functions, let's say here you have the person to provide what the weight and the height. Okay. I don't want to spoil this my BMI. Let me keep it because I have plans for it. So let me just return. I'll return just the BMI. Then let's create a new file called func2.py. In here, to help us execute this code, item 3. Okay, then what I want to illustrate, let's create a new function v1, a function that will greet you and say good morning, sir. So let's say greetings as the name of our function. But conventionally, when you are creating a function, the name of the function should depict what it's doing. Remember that I said a function is an action word. If I say walk, you know what you are going to do. So if I'm creating a function that is saying greeting, like when you hear this name, you should know exactly what it's doing. And I want it to get your name. Yes.
Sorry for interfering.
Yes, go ahead.
I don't know whether everyone else is experiencing the same issue, because your this thing seems to be breaking. It breaks for like maybe 3 seconds.
What's the issue?
Network issue from your side. Is it from your side or?
Oh, okay.
And I'm struggling to catch everything.
Any other person confirm that?
Yes, me too. I'm experiencing that.
Same here too.
Let me keep my mouth closer to the microphone and see. As for the network, I've already mentioned that today my network isn't good.
Oh, okay.
But is it okay this way?
Yeah.
Is it okay this way?
Yes, it's okay.
Okay.
It's fine.
All right.
It's fine. There's no issue.
Okay, sure. All right. So let me keep my mouth this way. Okay. So we are trying to define a function here called greeting. It takes in your name and your title. Then it's going to greet you as such. So ideally we would have used maybe a print function because it's a greeting. This will not be like a usable function. I mean, in a bigger project, I don't think you are going to have something like that. But then let me just go ahead to illustrate what I want to illustrate. So I want this to say, hey, then your title, followed by, and let me intentionally put a comma here after your title, then your name, okay, and say, or let me change the hey to good day, so that it makes sense. Okay, so this is a very simple function that just greets you depending on your name and your title. All right, so I will go ahead and use this function to call the function. This is greeting. Then the name is Obed, and the title is say Mr. Okay, something like that. So now, if we run this program, which we are yet to make executable, so we have to chmod plus x func2. Then let's run this. Func2. Okay, it says good day, Mr. Obed. Okay, this is in the basic form, so I believe you understand. I've already explained them. But what I want to draw your attention to is, what if I forget this one? If I forget to use the title, what's going to happen? Let's run it. And we are getting an error. But if you are writing a program, can't you make some of these parameters optional? Because there are times that the person refuses to choose a title. So you've developed a program, inputs. The person is supposed to choose the title, input their first name, their middle name, their last name, and they choose not to input their title. They also believe, somebody like me, I don't have a middle name. So I'm definitely not going to put something in my middle name. So how do we cater for that? Assuming, let me say, maybe I should do something else aside this. So let me write it well. So the name, say F name for first name. We need your last name. We need your middle name. So let me make it M name. So what is happening here is, let's assume that we are building a registration form. And at the end of the day, we could just return a string. That is also possible. We could return a string. We could return a string like this. That says that, say hi, then your title. Hi and your title. Say your full name is, then we pass name. Oh, sorry, the first one was F name, then middle name, followed by your last name. Okay, so this is a complete function that says, hi, Mr. Your full name is so and so. So to use it, I have to provide all of these. Remember, I could equally use positional arguments or keywords arguments, anyhow I want it. But the best way in this case, in order not to mess anything up, would be using a keyword. So I'll say my first name is Obed. My last name is, I like spacing. So my last name is Ehoneah. Middle name, unfortunately, I don't have a middle name. So if I leave the middle name out, I'm going to get a problem. Because of that, I I have to provide an empty string. But you should be able to build your program such that it accepts what how do you call it? Optional arguments. I mean, some of the arguments that you want should be optional. As it stands now, we haven't made it optional. So I could pass this to a print statement. That's one interesting thing about programming. It's becoming long, but still, this can be done. Okay. If I wanted to, I could have just passed this to a variable. I could have passed it to a variable. Sorry, where are you? Hey, sorry. And say the variable is Obed. Just call the variable Obed. Then I'll print Obed. So there are several ways you can go about these things. I'll print Obed. But you know that this is essentially going to call this function, and the function is returning this. So it's going to return a string to this Obed. When you call it, let me call it for you to see. Ooh, there's a type error somewhere. Middle name accepted an argument. Unfortunately, there is nothing here. That's the problem. Let me do it this way. That's the problem I want us to face. So for now, let me try and see if it works. So okay. So the problem was me using middle. It's M name. Should pay attention to these things. Okay. So now you see, hi doc, your full name is Obed. Then there is an empty string here, Ehoneah. Okay. How do we make it optional? That's what we want to learn. How to make this thing optional. In order to make any of them optional, what you have to do is you have to provide what we call a default parameter or default value for the parameter. So I know that middle name may not be a thing for everybody. For that matter, I can go ahead and say that by default, this is none. Okay? By default, it is none. Title, let me say by default, is equal to Mr. or Mrs. This means that when we pass these values, we are providing values as values to the parameters when defining the functions. It means that if the person doesn't provide these ones, so now if I delete this and I delete that, so far from all the functions I've created, you see that the exact number of parameters I use is the exact number I use when I'm calling it. The moment I bring in the default values, I can ignore those ones and still my program is going to work. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. Clear. Then run func2. Then it says, hi, Mr. or Mrs. Your full name is Obed. Okay. So see that because I provided none here, it printed none as my middle name. I didn't pay attention to it. So ideally, you would have checked for it. Okay. So you'd have written the code to check. If, let's say, string to return is equal to, then let me pass this whole thing to it. So that I'll return string to return. Okay, so let's return string to return. Good. But then before I create string to return, I'll use my if statement to check if m name is not none. Python is interesting. The way you speak the English, that's how you write it. So if m name is not none, then we have string to return is equal to this. But if it is, so else I want you to return, but don't show the middle name. Okay? Don't show middle name. So let me delete this. Great. Now, our program will be able to decipher whether to print a middle name or not to print middle name. So let's go ahead and run it. And you see, hi, Mr. or Mrs. Yes, yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
No.
Okay. Anyway, so let's see. Hi, Mr. or Mrs. Your full name is Obed Ehoneah. The only different thing is I checked if it is not now. So now when we are calling it and you provide an M name, then it's definitely going to use the M name. So let me say my M name is K. Say something like that. Then we run this. It's definitely going to add, ooh, there is a comma somewhere. Oh, syntax error. Sorry about that. So as you can see, your full name is Obed K. Ehoneah. Right. The new thing I have introduced is the fact that you can provide default values. And that means once you've provided default values, you could actually call the function without providing those ones. But if you paid attention to what I've done here so far, even in the presence of the default value, I use the keyword argument. What if I want to use positional argument? How is this going to work? Okay, let's say I want to provide my first name, which is Obed, my last name, which is Ehoneah, and I don't want to provide middle name, I don't have one. Then title, which is Doctor. Anybody sees a problem with what we have here? Does anybody see a problem with what we have here? Share with me, let me know. This time round, I've provided Obed, Ehoneah, and Doctor because I don't have a middle name, so I'm trying to ignore my middle name. Do you see any problem with it? Or what do you think? What do you think about the outcome? If I should run this, what do you think is going to give me? Anyone?
Yeah, doctor. What I feel is
Yes.
the M name there is going to be doctor. The M name is going to be doctor because
okay.
Yeah,
Great.
The if statement that you check that if M name is not known, that means
Exactly.
that the M name is not known, so it's actually doctor.
Okay, good. So when you are using positional keywords, remember that the position or the order in which the arguments appear is very important, or the order in which the parameters appear is very important. So because I haven't given the exact keywords, what's happening here is that it is ordering them in the order that they appeared. So the first one you provided here will be aligned with this, will be assigned to this particular parameter. It becomes F name. This second one becomes L name. Then this one becomes M name. So you rather that they didn't provide title. So at the end of the day, this is going to print hi, hi, Mr. or Mrs. because we didn't provide for title. So it will say, hi, Mr. or Mrs. Your full name is Obed Dr. Ehoneah, which is what you didn't isn't what you wanted. Okay. So anytime that you are going to use the positional argument, pay attention to this one. Anytime you are going to use a positional argument, you always have to make the optional argument the last argument. Make the optional argument the last argument if you want to use positional arguments. Okay, so let's assume that I didn't provide this, and the only why, what's happening? Why is it underlying? Am I checking for something somewhere? Hey, relax. Let me find out what's happening. Why are you giving me this one? Oh, Pastor, save the thing. Let me see. So that's basically what I was trying to explain. Anytime that you are using these things without with in terms of their positional argument, the optional ones like this one, which is optional because I'm providing the default value. The optional one will always have to be at the far end. If you don't do it like that, then you're going to get into a lot of trouble. I mean, it's going to direct them by their positions, okay? And that will also throw an error. As we saw, it wasn't even allowing me put it there. Okay, so now if I go this way, we can still get it to work, okay? So if I print this now, yes, it should work for us. Hi, doctor. Your full name is Obed Ehoneah. Even though I didn't provide this and I'm not using keyword arguments. So if you don't want to use keyword arguments, then you always have to push your optional parameters. That is the parameters with default values to the far end. Once they are at the far end, you don't have a problem. But even if they are at the far end and you have multiple of them, and some comes before the other, but that one that comes before the other, you didn't provide a value as we saw earlier, that's also going to be a problem. So I prefer that anytime you are using the optional argument, the best you can do for yourself is to go with the keyword arguments so that you always know the exact value or exact parameter or arguments that you are putting in. I hope that makes sense. So typically, this is the concept of functions. Maybe a few other additions, then we are done. But if you now know how to create a function, you now know how to call a function, you know how to pass parameters to a function, how to pass the argument to a function, and how to use the output of a function. Okay, so essentially that is almost everything about functions. There are a lot more, but I mean the basic understanding that you require to use functions, that's what we have tackled already. So let me pause here and take, if there are any questions, then I'm thinking about something small that I need to walk you through before we finish. So any questions so far?
Green.
Come again. I can't hear you. Damien. I didn't hear what you said, so if you could come again. Okay, so even though we discussed the basics of functions and their arguments and parameters and things, there are times that when you are creating your function, depending on the function itself, you don't know the exact parameters that someone who is going to use your function is going to be using. Or there are times that you want to offer the ability of your function to work on any number of arguments anytime it is used. So I'm creating a function such that if you want, pass only 3 arguments to it. Okay? That is also possible. So let's look at that. In those of us who have done C programming, you remember what we call variadic functions. Okay, so that's the similar concept that we are dealing with here. How do we create a function that takes a variable number of arguments? Variable number of arguments. Okay, that is our interest right now. And interestingly, you remember that in Python we have collections. Okay, you remember them: lists, dictionaries, we have sets, which we have spoken extensively about. If you remember, I took my time to go through each of these, and there was a reason for it. So now, if I want a variable number of arguments, which I don't want to predetermine before the creation of my function, when I'm creating it, I want my function to be flexible enough to take in any number of arguments that the user is passing. Let's say this greeting function that we created, we want to say that the greeting should be extended to any number of names that a person passes. Let's assume, okay, let me create a new function called greet user. Okay, greet underscore user. And what this function is doing is going to take your name, print hello. So use the F statement so that I could do this. Hello name. As simple as this. Okay, maybe I should go back to my terminal. Create and code is vfunc.py. User being okay, good. Python. Oh, good. Python 3. Okay, so I'm creating a function that we call greet user, and it's taking name, and all that it is doing with the name is what? Printing hi. So let's use the F. Hi name. As simple as that. So if I make this script executable, chmod plus X, then vfunc, run this vfunc. I was going to run the function when I haven't called it. So I've only defined the function. Let me call it user, then pass Obed to it. So when I run this program right now, it says, hi, Obed. But then, what if I want to create this function such that the person can add as many arguments as possible? So you should be able to add Tony. You should be able to add, who else is here? Damien. Like as many as you want. But then, right now, oh, what happened? Did I run the code? CD funcs. Oh, okay, good. Program sorry. vfunc. I'm getting an error because here it takes one positional argument, but 4 were given. This function that we have created currently takes only 1 argument, but 4 were given. So one way to go about this, to solve this problem, is for us to use the variable arguments, okay? And in Python, how we come by the variable arguments is just putting an asterisk in front of the argument name. Interestingly enough, anytime you put an asterisk, so let me comment it out and show you. Anytime you put an asterisk before the argument, the parameter, what it does is that it turns it into a tuple. It turns it into a tuple. The argument that you are going to pass are going to be collected and put together as a tuple. So in order to show you that what I'm saying, print him out. If we print out name, you remember how tuples are displayed. So if I pass this set of names, you show you how it's going to work. This is when it has only one parameter in there and we are printing it, okay? Comment this out. I expect that it will just as a string, okay? That's exactly what it will do. So let's run it and see. And we have Obed printed as a string here. But what if I put this in front of it and call this function?
All right. It's green.
Damien, I'm struggling to. Okay. So, great user. Now we've passed multiple names to it. So let's go ahead and run the same function and see what we have. And if you remember what tuples are, this is exactly what a tuple is. A collection in parentheses, separated with commas. You remember that? So anytime you want to collect any variable, now that I've done this, even though I've written just one parameter here, you see that we are passing 4 arguments and it's not having any problem. So you can pass hundreds, as many as you want, because you have done this. So as soon as you put the asterisk before the argument name, any of the arguments, as soon as you put an asterisk before the parameter name, it becomes a tuple. See what we have there on my screen. Name is what? A tuple. Just because I have put this thing there. It's just because of that. That is why I saw it as a tuple. If I take it off, it is no longer a tuple. So that is one way to accept a variable number of arguments. The next way that we can accept a variable number of arguments is if we are interested in accepting keys and their values. And whenever we mention keys and values and collection of keys and values, what comes into mind? You should remember that we are talking about a dictionary. So if we want to pass, instead of using C, let me explain something here before I even jump to this. If right now that we are using this, okay, let's assume that this is actually the form that we're filling and not just name. So normally what you will see is this is called args, okay? It's just common practice, args, to tell you arguments, okay? A certain number of arguments. So you may find it mostly being used this way. So let's assume that this is actually supposed to take, say, let me pass a comment here. Supposed to take your first name, last name, middle name, if you have middle name, take your age, and any other thing, maybe your personal profile, okay? So if I want you to pass me your information and I do it this way, you can go ahead and pass me that information. Say here, Obed, the surname is Ehoneah. I don't have any middle name. So I'll go ahead and maybe pass age 99, then end it like that. So if I go ahead and run this program, it's going to print those details for me as a tuple. Okay, so you by now know how to use a tuple because our previous session, that's what we did, how to access values in a tuple. So once I have gotten this, I can use a loop to loop through that tuple and get each of the members of the tuple and get the name and construct things for me. But the challenge here is that how will I know that this first one that you provided is your first name? Because when I was creating my function, I didn't state that this is your position. The first one will be the first name, the second one will be the last name. No, I didn't provide anything of that sort. In fact, I left it blank. I just wrote arguments like that, and you made a provision. So how do I ensure that what I'm getting, your name, the first name is the first name, the last name is the last name, the age is the age, and not mess anything up? That is when it becomes important for me to use variable arguments, but in the form of a dictionary. So to do that, I'll need to pass it as 2 asterisks. Okay, so commonly you see it being used as this way, but you could use any parameter name. Okay, so let me change this to args for you as well. So as soon as you put another asterisk here, you have changed this parameter. You see the tooltip up there. It's a dictionary. The reason why it's a dictionary is because I'll put these 2 things here. When it was only one, it was what? A tuple. Okay, when it was only one, it was a tuple. But then, as soon as I put this there, it becomes a dictionary. And by now, you should know how to access members of a dictionary. KW. So this is like the convention that you see out there. So for dictionaries, we have the keys and the values. So here, you'd have to provide the key and a value. And you remember how dictionaries are. Simply, dictionaries are written in this form where we have the key. So F name is equal to F name is equal to, then say Obed, comma, then hey, did I use equal to? Wow. Separated with a column. Then we have the next one, maybe last name, then column, what's the last name? Ehoneah, something like this. Okay. So these are things that you can also do with the functions, using collecting variable arguments and collecting. I mean, if you are interested in the value pair, then you use the key pair, you use the key. I think I'm getting tired. If you are using the key value pair, then you stick to the key value pair. If you are interested in just the values, then you stick to just the values. Okay. Note off. There is another thing, but I don't think I'll be teaching it right now. Maybe during the next session I'll mention it. I'll explain it well. But now let me just no, I hope that's how they spell it, or it's anonymous functions. I'm feeling tired, so trying to wrap up. Anonymous functions. You know, when we create all the functions that we've created so far, when we were creating it, we call the def keyword, then we give a name to the function. Okay, name of function, then we pass parameters to it before diving into our function. There are occasions where we don't want to go through the whole of this stress to reuse this function that we are creating. So that's one advantage of functions. It makes our code modular. It puts a block of code together to perform just a specific function, but then we are able to reuse it, as you have seen so far. Let's say with the BMI calculator that we have created. We can use it for multiple cases. But there are situations where you want a modular code like that, but you are not looking for reusability. You just want it to do some work once. That's all. I'm not going to call it anywhere. The very place that I'm creating the function is where I want to use it. So the best way to tackle that is to create an anonymous function. Don't give that function a name. Just create it and use it. It's going to return what it's going to return, and it's done. Okay, so maybe you are creating, say, if you want to create a function called sum, and this function will take two inputs x and y, and after taking two inputs x and y, it returns the result or the outcome of x plus y. Okay, this means that if I want to use this function, I have to come and call sum and pass, say, 2 and 3 to it. And if I decide to pass this to a variable v and go ahead to print v will be printed and I'll get 5 because this function returned 2 plus 3, which is 5. What if at that point in time I needed to use it once? I'm not going to reuse the function. Then I need to use an anonymous function as I have said. But how do we declare an anonymous function in Python? We have what we call lambda functions. So lambda functions are basically anonymous functions. And we use the function. We just need a function to play a role once and for all. We are not going to need it anywhere else. So we call it once and we are done. How to declare or define an anonymous function or a lambda function? You just call it by saying lambda. Then what are the parameters that you need? So in this case, the parameters are what? X and y. Then what are you going to return? You are going to return x plus y. Okay, so for now, this is just a brief introduction to anonymous functions. This will be a reading assignment. At least I've thrown some light onto it so that when you go to read it, it wouldn't be difficult. Then our next session, we are going to be looking in. So I'll do my best to touch on anonymous functions using lambda and the applicability, where they are actually applicable. Item. So we have to pay attention to the exceptions and error handling. So before I do that, I'll touch on lambda. Great. Let me pick any questions that you have because I'm getting tired. Sorry about that. Yes, we've done 1 hour 15 minutes already. Any questions? Or you don't have any questions for me? Let me quickly push the code to GitHub. I hope gets pull. Great. Then JC.
Okay.
Yes. PLD for. I'm listening.
Keyword args. This is a KW args.
Yeah.
KW args. Is it a must that you provide a dictionary for you to return a dictionary?
No, once, as in when you, is it a must that you do this? Is that what you are saying? That we could do it this way?
Is it a must that you provide a dictionary for you to
so what I'm saying,
when you are calling the function?
So when you are calling the function, as in the dictionary, the one I commented, as for the comment, I was just trying to explain what will actually happen. Okay. But then if we are not providing it, I mean, what will happen is that when we are passing, So I didn't show the calling, okay? When we are calling it with this, okay, so let's do something. Let's call this function. What should happen is we'll say something like this. F name is equal to, okay, let's see, F name is equal to Obed. Then last name is, so this has to be like this. Last name is equal to Ehoneah. This is what happens when I get tired. I'm considering that this has to be this way. Okay. So now when we pass this to the function, I mean, this is us calling the function, okay? So this was just me trying to explain that. So the comment wasn't necessary. I was just explaining that when you use function is a tuple, and when you use this KWArgs, you are passing a dictionary, okay? So what I meant by this statement is that this set of values that I've passed right now, when it gets in here, it will be received as a dictionary. So you need to know how to receive dictionaries to be able to receive the values here. So let's go ahead and print. Where is the print? Okay, this will do the printing for us. Run this program. Then I have to call it again. Star V. So you see what is returning to us? Sorry. Ima, can you see it?
I can see it.
The function itself, so the function itself is returning a dictionary to us. So that's what I meant. That this, so far as you do it this way, what actually becomes a dictionary. So at the end of the day, inside here, if you want to use it, if you want to use the function, this one I'm just only printing them out. But if you want to use the function itself, then you have to know how to use the access members of a dictionary. So in that, we have to use a loop. So I can say for, say, key, or for key in then k asks, for key in k asks, what do we want to do with the key? I want to print kw asks, then the key. And all of these usage, we have explained it in the previous session. Okay, so this, at the end of the day, what this is going to do is getting this as a dictionary. So I'm using a loop to say that for each key in this dictionary, I want to, and that's how we ask. So if we run this, we now get Obed and Ehoneah. And that's only because we are calling this one. Okay, so you may also have decided to do something else. Say you want to say do this, use the F and say key is equal to this. Okay, so if I go ahead and I print this, it's now going to show me F name is equal to Obed, L name is equal to Ehoneah. So in essence, all I'm saying is that you can pass these your arguments with the key and the value, as we did in the case of keyword arguments. But for you to use this format to accept a variable number of them, and at the end of the day, you are able to access everything that you are going to accept. You could have just created your own dictionary and passed it as a dictionary. Without this. So I could say that name. Okay, I could say name, but then I would have defined name already. That the name that I'm going to be, let me pass here. The name that I'm talking about is actually a dictionary. Okay, and this dictionary contains something like this. F name is Obed. Okay, then I'll come here and pass this name. So I could have defined my own dictionary. The essence of the asterisk or the asterisk args is when you are not aware of the total number of parameters to accept. That's when you use them. You will have to look at how. Okay, so I'll think about an implementation and we'll implement it during one of the sessions for us to see. But if you remember when we did see a function like the printf function, use something like that where you could accept variable number of arguments. So you can also create a Python function that can accept a variable number of arguments, but all arguments are how do you call it? They are in the form of a dictionary. So just as I said, if you create a function, let's say a form that people are supposed to fill their first name, they are supposed to fill their last name, username, password, and the rest. But then you know that some of them are optional and you don't know how many of them they will be entering the likes. Then you can use the QW args to get it. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I need to re-add this. Any other question? Okay, then thank you all for joining. I appreciate your time. Here's the next session soon. Then I think next week we have projects, so we can catch up with what we are yet to do. All right, thank you and see you some other time.
Thanks a lot.